I have returned. Greetings to all who love PS4 enough to tough it out through, count 'em, 6 episodes of rare and unique hidden gems for this console. Today will be no different other than the added spice of 10 more tantalizing tidbits to coerce you into collecting. These ones have been marinating for days, so without further delay, let's savor the goodness within. Ripley's Believe It or Not, this game is a remake of an arcade title from 1985 ported to the Game Boy in 1990 by developer UPL. This one was released in 2019 with added content for a knockdown, drag-em-out battle for the birds. This, of course, was the winner in my giveaway for a hidden gem I hadn't played yet, so I'm happy to review it now and give it the much-needed praise it deserves. You should be able to snag this one for about 15 or 20 bucks. Let's waddle into the gameplay now. The vivid color aesthetic, the fast-paced dodgeball-like action, the Penguin Riley that resembles Flavor Flav, I mean, this one's got it all. Don't let the dollar store bargain bin look fool you. This title has addictive power and should really start its own religion. It provides up to 4-player local or online co-op with customization, but its story mode is most satisfying also. You will take on minions until a boss fight that recruits new members to your avian cult. I couldn't put this game down, so for hours I lost myself in the color-blasted fiesta before my eyes. To not get this game while it's as cheap as it looks is truly sacrilegious. 8 out of 10. You're going to hear or see versions of the word shadow quite a bit in this go-around, so I hope I can make it fit into the narratives adequately. In essence, I'd appreciate the lack of shade, is what I'm trying to say. This puzzle platformer is developed by Australian indie developer called Shadowplay. What do you know? There's that word again. It was actually a prototype in 2016 until more developers joined forces like Blowfish and Sweaty Chair to make it a full-fledged indie title. By 2019, we have the version seen here only being released in the UK on this console. Let's see if this game overshadows the rest in a brief review. Lessons learned and butterflies caught later, I came to appreciate the silent movie I had just played. Greta is your reverse marionette heroine in distress who will need light guidance, pun intended. You climb, run, and power your path with shadows that intentionally dance in the glow that only you control. It's a fun idea with a hair of rebellion attached. Besides the butterflies you capture, you may run into a few bugs, but not in the 6- or 8-legged family. I'm talking about some minor glitches that for the most part have been patched. No major issues and nothing to scoff at ultimately. The game is visually impressive with backgrounds and foregrounds that add to the overall experience. If you're sick of the spoken movie The Shadow with Alec Baldwin, maybe try this unspoken, playable variety to break the monotony and to finally prove that The Shadow definitely knows. I'll give this one a 7 out of 10. For the YouTube police and demonetization of good people who like a little color in their speech, this one's for them. I'll change the name of this game in order to demonstrate how silly that rule can be. So, Ascending Misfortune is a roguelite vertical action title from Strictly Limited Games. This is number 777 of 1,200 copies made. Damn, only missed that by 100. It was developed by Tahoe and Togue Productions. Roguelite simply means that death serves a purpose within your gameplay. I am a secret fan of these style games, so I was immediately grinning devilishly from ear to ear when I popped this in. I loved the cover art with a dude named Arok the Fallen, who looks like Zartan from G.I. Joe has met an untimely fate for his past sins. I'd say my fascination was equal to the 7th circle of Hades. Let's rock. Why rock, you say? Because your ears will bleed and your soul may suffer, at least for a finite time, while the blistering shredding of guitars accompany you along your journey out of the shadows below. Suffice to say, my agony level was raised in the real world also due to the lack of music choice. This reminds me of the Motley Crue album called Shout at the Devil, because you could argue that it is actually anti-Lucifer and not pro-Lucifer. In any case, you have the Conquest mode, which is the pitchfork in the hay when it comes to the main feature of this title. There are gauntlet or weekly challenges, but I stuck to the featured offering. With 3 playable characters upon getting shards to unlock them, you have unique fighting styles with each one that cater to different personalities of fighters. You gather bloodstones for mid-level power-ups from most of the enemies you thwart, and health pickups occasionally. Risk-reward is utilized in certain segments also. There's an old-school visual appeal here that is undeniably pleasing, and if you can get past the demons and metal tracks, The Ascension is totally worth it. 7.5 out of 10. I love the smell of rain. I mean, who doesn't? And when I find out there's a chance of rain, it's like my day automatically turns chill. But to the contrary, the risk of rain that this game provides proves chaotic, even if the skies outside have tamed me. Developer Hopoo Games and publisher Gearbox have changed the weather forecasts to a very different meaning. This version, of course, comes with both Part 1 and Part 2. Part 1 was a limited run release initially, and then both parts were released more widely in this version. The games are roguelike action platformers, which I will briefly describe as games that, if you die, you basically lose your progress to that point, as opposed to a roguelite title, which I mentioned in the prior game review, serves the gamer a purpose upon death. Now, let's knock these both out. The forecast calls for rain, and the clouds cast their shadows upon the land. I think there's something to be said for a 2D title to really hold you, and as simple graphically as it may look, has a definite hook. If you were here to ask me if this game was forgiving, I might say, like Ukraine forgives Russia for attacking them? It was a brutal initiation, but I kept coming back for abuse like I was trauma bonded to it. The power-ups are plentiful and well-constructed. The maps make you work for your victory, mostly because of the timer that increases the difficulty the more you let it tick away. All I wanted to do was to get to that blasted teleporter, and they didn't make that easy, but they did make it fun. I give this first installment a 7.5 out of 10. You'd think that when you go from 2D to 3D, have a stackable perk option and multiple character choices, that the formula for a better sequel would yield better results. Although I wasn't completely repulsed to the changes, I didn't quite catch the desire that the first title gave me to keep making me do a run. Was it fun? Or was it trying to solve too much with a longer equation? I think for me the latter is true, but I did have to let it grow on me to realize that the game is inherently fun. It also inherited its predecessor's difficulty with extra credit. Could I come back to it and let the addiction consume me? I think the answer is still yes, but with a lower overall score of 7 out of 10. Based on the Japanese manga series and extended story to that manga, Sandland is an action RPG produced by ILCA with some attractive artwork. The creator, Akira Toriyama, was well known for his work on Dragon Ball and Dr. Slump. He unfortunately passed away March of this year, but left behind a somewhat engaging legacy with this title. This one sits around $45 currently, and now we'll explore how well-founded that price is. Sandland really feels like some TLC was given to its characters. Environmental factors such as shading, lighting, particle effects, and so on were utilized in the cartoon world it inhabits. The demon Beelzebub is your avatar for fun that is capable of land or vehicle battles. Water is a scarcity and sought after in this desert land, and forces are formed to liberate its inhabitants from the unruly tyrant named Supreme Commander Zhu. The progression works more than it doesn't, and I found liberation during my playthrough, but it still felt like something was missing other than the water. It really tried to be a well-crafted story, but I feel lackluster quests and crafting were mundane at best. My time wasn't necessarily spent unwisely. There were special moments or events that were semi-memorable, and I could tell that the team really tried to be accurate to the world and engagement you were given. I'll give this a good average score of 7 out of 10. Sounds like a title for my ex. But I was pleasantly surprised by how artistic this was, unlike her. They even brought in Hannah Murray from Game of Thrones for the voice acting. The poetry and the dreamlike sequences really elevated this game for me, and tends to grow on you even after you played it for hours. It's a $60 limited run title developed by Daus Deuxième and published by Focus Entertainment. The two entities did prove very compatible in its production. Let's try to solve the puzzle of should you buy this. Since I live my life in the shadows, the relation I drew from this story really parallels my own. You may even find me huddled in a corner like some reclusive vampire when someone opens the shades in my house, and coincidentally, it's what kills you in this game. Controlling both your shadow and your human self provided a fairly unique 2D to 3D puzzle platformer that consumes your need to advance and superglues you to your dark environment that this begs to be played in. I loved the rewind feature as well, like I was in some kind of Life is Strange world where Max was your childlike character still developing her powers. I'm a fan of watercolor art, and the incorporation here was fabulous, mixed with the hand-drawn animations. It's important that runtime is substantial, but not overstayed, and the 5 to 7 hours given to you for this one is complementary to the variety. There are so many puzzle platformers out there, but this one will not leave my mind. I give this an 8 out of 10. 1989 and Amiga brought us a game that by all rights deserved a complete reimagining, and we finally have it. A full 27 years after the fact, released in 2016, here we sit wondering where we were when this game was released. I'm being a bit facetious, and even now I had to ask myself where I was when the re-release came out. Oh, that's right, America. This Hong Kong release evaded even me for years after. It's like I stumbled and fell down the rabbit hole I needed to when I discovered it. So the million-dollar question is, how close to $1 million is this? A hyper-violent hack-and-slash action platformer that is compatible with but not purchasable in the US. There are versions that go for more due to their rarity, but this fully playable version sits around $40 and is completely sufficient, so I say give the mail couriers the month they need to ship it to you, and let's take a dive into the game. Timing, rage chains, rolls, and score multipliers are but a few of the things that are different from the original game, but they really add to the distinctiveness of this one. I felt Predator-like rage while having a slightly more attractive face as I lopped people and creatures alike in half. Of course, how you battle is as important as how many you kill, because the higher the score, the better chance of scoring an elixir to continue, if you perish within the level. Also, the mana you collect won't be the mana that you may have heard about coming from the heaven in the Bible, but it will provide some pretty cool unlocks, including a playable version of the original game with endless lives if you choose. Also, you will of course be graced with stat boosts with the more you collect. There will be 6 stages that you can replay at any time to build up the mana, and if you don't grind too long, you should be able to slaughter this one in about 3 to 4 hours. I give this a 7.5 out of 10. This first-person romp started back in 1997 and comes covered in a new coat of blood with this 2013 reboot version that ran to 2016 with the sequel and all the way up to 2022 with Part 3. We of course are looking at the special reserve version limited to 2,500 copies that includes Part 1 and Part 2, and it goes for around $150. I have acquired number 270 and I am just thrilled to own it. There's a limited run variant cover floating around also if chase is your thing, but be prepared to pay with a drop of your firstborn's blood and a Crobat reverse holo Pokemon card for that one. Maybe this next one isn't so rare, but it is unique and a direct sequel in this franchise, so why not show it? Still not an average, everyday game you see on store shelves, but if you're obsessed with collecting every game in a trilogy, it may be worth a look for you. I was surprised that some people didn't even know there was a third one when I asked around. Of course, Flying Wild Hog and Devolver still held their roles in developing and publishing on this one, like the prior 2 games, so I'm glad to see some consistency there. So now, let's move on to my trilogy review. I'm going to try not to inundate you with too many jokes that refer to the phallic nature of your protagonist's name, which happens to be Lo Wang, and mostly stick to my opinions on the 3 titles. We'll see how that goes. But that may be easiest for me to do with the first title of the 3. It felt more serious, more businesslike, maybe a little dated, and straightforward in its fighting progression, but it's still fun as you search for the katana your boss sent you to purchase, and hook up with a masked demon named Hoji. The name of this game is Action, and it's as rich as mascarpone cheesecake, but it lacks in the department of variation. Attacks are pretty standard between slashing with a patterned swoosh set and shooting your cannon from the hip at Duke Nukem-style hordes of ugly mofos. Okay, that may or may not have been a reference. Also, you have chi to either heal or use for special moves with your sword, but it came out a bit sticky in the game to execute. Ultimately, this was a fairly solid entry, which, when erect, is a 7 out of 10. Now, for the star of the show, I'll briefly discuss the rare comedic-driven first-person sequel that somehow managed to feel completely different than the first one, other than the over-the-top bloody kills, that is. Okay, exchange katana for trinket, and add a damsel in distress who needs her soul back to her body like some damn Death Cab for Cutie song, then you got your story. The weapon set is vast, including bows, short blades, and chainsaws this time around, with elemental effects you can apply to most. I didn't expect randomly generated levels, but I found myself within them here. It speaks to replayability, but not to familiarity on a repeat run. I want to applaud the devs for adding a map this time around with markers to avoid the navigation masturbation I put my wang through on the first title. Come on, I couldn't help myself on that one. I'll give this one a 7.5 out of 10. Back to the Wang Cave we go, with a protagonist that should have a middle name of Hung, and a Nissan Fairlady Z that should be in a body shop for repairs. We still have a first-person, action-heavy installment with a bit more platforming than before, and maybe a little more tongue-in-cheek also. Our telepathic demon friend Hoji is back, and Wang shows his loyalty as he protects him from the witch who wants to use Hoji's mask power for a weapon. Just like a Wang should do this time, you have finishers that are different for certain enemies that also refill your health, but drain you figuratively in other ways. They dialed back the weapon selection and customization that the second one provided, but it never felt out of place. I had more than a ball playing this. In fact, I had 2. I'll give this a 7.5 out of 10. I had to do some soul searching to find the perfect game for this list, and I went through about 4 other options, but I kept coming back to this one, because number 1, it's a vertically scrolling shmup, which is different from every other game here, and number 2, it's just so addictive and appealing, which is really hard to come by. 2016 and Infinite Dreams brought us the 1943 of Capcom's hit list, and if you enjoyed those games, then this third installment in the series is a no-brainer for purchase. Unfortunately, you'll be paying out the wazoo because it's a limited run title, so you'll be looking at around $75 or more, but I think the price is warranted for a well-done title that collectors drool over. Let's do a flyby review. I think the formula for a well-constructed title includes objectives that reward sufficiently by goading out your player. Skyforce has found that formula and included gorgeous visuals to hold your interest while you do it. There are 4 difficulty levels on each of the 9 stages presented, and card buffs along with ship upgrades from Star Collection. Make no mistake, this is a grind that you will have to replay the levels to progress, but replay is welcomed, like Journey's song, Open Arms. Wasn't that a great era of music? But back to the action. I've played my fair share of games, and honestly, the ones I want to keep in my collection follow the formulas similar to this one. When I make my way back home from a long day, and I want to learn how to fly, summoning Dave Grohl doesn't always scratch that itch, so I redirect to Skyforce, and I settle in for the evening and into the next morning. I give this one an 8 out of 10. Again, we have gobbled up 10 more physical releases that fly a bit under the radar, and along with this, we have gained crucial knowledge of which titles may stand out in a crowd. I swear, I'm not Netflix, but are you still watching? If you are, I'm throwing in a giveaway for if anyone that has the motivation to do a little backtracking. I'll explain. In this video, there have been exorbitant amounts of references to shadows. If you can count the correct number of spoken and visual word references, I will send you a free PS4 title from my collection. Let's call it a shadow giveaway. So if you think you have the correct number, leave it in the comments below and I'll respond. If you're deemed the winner, you can find my info in the description below and contact me for the prize. It's my way of saying thank you for your loyalty and your interest in PS4. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more giveaways in the near future, and bravo for making it to Volume 6. Cheers!